Hi, this is Dean Butler, and you're listening to the FSF Podcast.
Hello, guys. Welcome to the FSF Podcast. I am Tim. I am your host, and of course, I have the ever blurry Kathleen with me today. We're very excited
I'm
to have.
just too awesome for the computer to handle.
There's something like that, yes.
Hey, there it goes.
There
I said
it goes.
I was awesome.
Ta-da!
Never mind.
Anyway, our guest today has been a producer on the Golf Channel of The Faraday Show since 2011, but that's probably not where you know him best for. Our guest has also played Jeff Griffin on the New Gidget Show, Hank Summers on Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and most notably, he was Almanzo Wilder for 9 seasons on the show Little House on the Prairie. We are very excited, Kathleen's probably even more excited than I, to welcome Dean Butler to the FSF Podcast. Welcome to the show, Dean.
Hey, good afternoon or good evening to you. So I just want to correct something right off the bat.
Yeah, please do.
It was not 9 seasons. For me, it was 5 seasons.
IMDb lies.
Yeah. So, well, the show was around for 9 years plus an extended 10th for 3 movies. But
right.
I was with it season 6, 7, 8, 9, and the final 10th year.
Aha. IMDb, the Wikipedia of the entertainment world.
Yeah, just
you could have asked me, Tim. I would have told you.
Huh.
I should have known.
Tim, why don't you ask?
Right?
Kathleen knows. Why aren't you asking? I know. No. You just you gotta go your own way, man. You gotta go your own way.
Do you have a little sister?
I do.
Okay. Do you like asking her for advice on anything?
Actually, I do ask her for advice, but it wouldn't matter if I asked her or not. She's going to offer it.
Well, see, she's had access to our files. She could have seen it and known that I was wrong, but she chose not to. She chose to allow me to have this moment.
She set you up to have this moment. Okay. They say in life that the mistakes are where the good stuff is.
Exactly. So,
when everything's perfect, that's not really very interesting. It's when there's a hiccup and a bump. That's when people get interested.
Exactly.
So I think you're okay there.
Well, see,
we are so good at hiccups and bumps.
There you go.
And now that I know where the betrayal stands, we'll get started with our questions for Dean.
Okay.
Now,
such a harsh word.
So, Dean, in the pre-show, I talked about some of the things that have one of the things that become standard on our show. And that's wanting to know what is the background of the people that we talk to. I like knowing what makes people tick, what got them to who they are, why they are, what they do, all those different things. So in the story of Dean Butler, what were the influences on you as a young man that encouraged you to reach out for a career in the entertainment field?
There are probably any number of them, but the things that I focus on, and particularly, is I think about my origin story as sort of the real trigger to the beginning of my professional life. I think about 2 contrasting moments. One, in the 8th grade, I was a painfully shy, introverted, not really able to communicate kind of kid. I was cast because my English teacher was trying to drag me out in a very small part in an English class play. I had 3 lines and forgot 2 of them in the performance. so that, and was mortified, so that was sort of to me, like the guarantee that I could never be a public person of any kind. But 2 years later, as I'm in the process of getting a pretty average to less than average grade in my geometry class, my teacher, Mr. Cochran, who had this wonderful Oklahoma drawl, was running the scoreboard at a varsity basketball game, or he did run the scoreboard at varsity basketball games, and he invited me to do the scorebook, the official scorebook at our varsity games. Now, that's a pretty cool thing to do because you're charting the entire game and you're getting you've got the whole picture of the game in your hands as you're recording this. But the really fun thing, the transformative moment for me happened just before the game started, when he looked over at me as the game's about to begin and asked me who's going to introduce the starting lineups. Sitting in front of me on the table in the gymnasium was an old silver Shure microphone, one of these classic old pedestal mics. And the moment for me, if you were doing the movie of the moment, you would see the entire gym would go black, and there would be a pin spot shining down on the silver microphone and glowing. This was the moment. This literally was the moment when I found my life. It's like when I spoke into that microphone and heard my voice and heard the applause, not because of my voice, but because of the names I was reading.
Right.
There was this incredible connection for me about the need to be. I had this, although I was incapable of it, I had a very big need to be heard. And that opportunity, that invitation from my geometry teacher, I probably got a C- in the class, but he gave me my life. And it just changed everything for me. And a year later, I followed a girl I had a crush on into our theater at Piedmont High and joined the chorus of our production of Once Upon a Mattress, and stood on the stage and felt the applause and the laughter and the teamwork of being in a play. That was a big part of it too, is teamwork. And I felt so at home on the stage standing in that light. And that was really the game-changing moment. Those two moments. So I gave you three moments: the eighth grade fail, the moment in front of the microphone, which really was the big moment, and the confirmation standing on the stage, following the girl that I had the crush on into the theater. The relationship didn't sustain, but the love of being in the light stayed with me, and that was a very big thing for me. And I think more than anything else, those events sort of started me down the path on being the person that I was going to be. And I would always say to people, it was terrifying, seeing that mic, because you think, am I going to be rejected speaking into this microphone? But I think the lesson is, it was for me and for anybody, is the things that scare us the most can often be the most wonderful doorways into who we are and what we're really about. And that I am so grateful for the invitation to have been at that scorer's table, and that silver Shure microphone changed everything for me. So that's the origin story. That's my origin story, Jim. You asked that question. That's it.
I like that. And it's funny too, Dean, because I can't tell you how many guests we've had come on and tell me that there's been someone that they followed into this field, and they're like, well, the relationship didn't last, but the love for what we're doing has. That has been been a very common theme, more than you think.
Yeah. Oh, no, I think that doesn't surprise me. I mean, yeah, and look, this was a wonderful girl, girl, great singer, wonderful talent. But it was what she introduced me to that was really the important thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
It goes to prove my point from pre-show as well, with there's a girl involved.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Totally, yes. That resonates with me entirely. that there's a girl involved has been a big piece of a lot of things that have happened in my life.
Yeah, I feel that.
Yeah, I mean, no question. No question. We won't go into it, No. Well, we can follow that wherever you want to follow it, but but there's been a lot of that. Mm-hmm. A lot of being drawn by a woman into a situation.
I moved across the state. I moved away from my family. I moved away from my hometown because of a boy. So
to follow the boy.
I did.
Yeah.
Yes, very good.
Same. Yep. Well, not the boy, but I followed the girl across state. So.
Yeah, there you go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
there you go.
Worked out pretty well.
It's worked out great for me. 25 years later, there we are.
almost 10 years.
I'm sorry. How many years later?
Well, actually, no, it's 26 now. 26.
Good for you.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, that's no small accomplishment, at all.
No.
I mean, Catherine and I have been married for 23 years. We've been together for 28 years.
right.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
I mean, we look at it and say, my God, it's almost, it's almost half my life. I mean,
Mhm.
it's like, it's closing in on that. It's certainly more than a third of my life. And when we have those relationships, they are stabilizing. They stabilize who we are. They are central to who we are and who
Absolutely.
we're able to be in the world.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no question.
And the simple
my
fact that
husband-
my wife hasn't killed me by putting a pillow over my face while I'm sleeping is amazing.
That's huge.
My husband and I have been together. We've been married 9.5 years. It'll be 10 years in December.
Okay.
We've been together
Okay.
for 12 years.
Yeah.
We have a 5-year-old. Like it's there's
Wow.
it was worth it to follow him across state. He's also our
There you
editor, and
go.
he's going to hear this, and he's going to be like, "Hey, she likes me."
Yeah.
Just a little.
That's really important that our significant others know that we like them.
It is.
And it's important for us to know that they like us. I mean, that's
It's helpful.
That's a biggie.
Yeah.
Yes,
That's helpful.
That's a biggie. Yeah.
She's a keeper.
Yeah.
I'll keep her around. So,
Oh, goodness. So, Dean, we were talking pre-show a little bit about Little House, and I mean, obviously, that is what you're probably most known for, is
Of course.
being Almanzo.
No question.
But Little House just celebrated its 50th anniversary, and
It is in the process
It
of
is
celebrating it. This whole year is our 50th anniversary.
is fantastic. That is absolutely
yeah.
amazing. But I actually
Yeah.
had found an article that the U.S. Sun had posted with an interview with you. And you brought out something in the interview that I hadn't really thought about the age difference between you and Melissa when you were filming.
Oh, wow.
Could
Okay.
not be done in Hollywood now. But the way that it was
Right.
handled on Little House, the way that Michael made sure that it was handled, was a very respectful relationship. And that kind of seems to be something that Hollywood has lost track of over the years. That it seems that they've forgotten that child actors are still people, that they still need to be treated like people. So what, in your mind, made the set of Little House stand out as different in the way that the child actors were treated? And do you think that that's something that Hollywood can get back to?
Well, I think actually, Kathleen, I think Hollywood today, when I say today, what does that mean? I mean, today, the last 10 years, since the sort of the explosion of the Me Too movement, I think Hollywood is far more concerned about the welfare of children today than they ever were, than Hollywood was generally when I was of that age working around a lot of young people. Now, I will say in contrast to that, I think the Little House set was a uniquely good place, one of those uniquely good places for kids. Kids came, they were well supervised, they went to school, they, other than, Jonathan Gilbert, who was not a particularly good student, a very bright kid, but a little bit of an underachiever. And Jonathan, of course, was Willie Olson. And so that all stood to reason that he was going to be an underachiever. But very, very bright. These kids all did their work and did it well. And I think came out of the experience reasonably, very reasonably solid citizens. And I think that certainly the headlines or the tabloids for the years have been littered with stories of people who did not come out of it well on the other end. I really think that the biggest challenge that kids have faced traditionally in Hollywood is their parents. And what do their parents really want out of this? And I think people really have to examine that, because the parent is the one that puts the kid in the situation. I don't care what parent tells me, and I've heard this for years. oh, Johnny really wants to be an actor. So, we're doing this because he really wants to do it. If Johnny told his mother that he wanted to jump off cliffs, we wouldn't be necessarily jumping off cliffs. There's a vicarious thrill that the parent is getting. That's the only way that happens, because it's not the kid's career, it's the parent's career that it really is, because it's the parent that's got to get the kid to every meeting, every call, the parent is completely in the driver's seat and in control of the situation. The kid is a minor. The kid has no control over what's happening. They may love to do it. I get that.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of kids love doing that work, and they're really, really good at it. But it's the parent that really is in charge of how this experience is going to go for their child. And since look, we've got a pretty powerful documentary on, I think it's on Netflix right now, called Quiet on the Set.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which is telling horror stories about the way a certain group of kids at Nickelodeon came through that experience. And I certainly know people who worked at Nickelodeon, and this was a uniquely challenging situation for kids, but parents were willing to be sidetracked, because that's the way that happens, is that parents were separated from their children in that situation. Little House parents were not separated from their children. Parents had total access to their children all the time. And so you did not see, I was never aware of any situation where a child was placed in an awkward situation. We're well past the days of Judy Garland, when kids were given amphetamines to go to sleep or barbiturates to go to sleep, and amphetamines to wake them up so that they could work. That stuff, to my knowledge, is not happening anymore. Culturally, the business has moved beyond that. And so when I said in that article that the relationship, the casting that we had, that casting had never been done before that. You never saw a casting like that before that, and you've never seen it since then.
Right.
Now, it was possible then because of who Michael was and what the show was. I don't think today it would matter who the executive producer was. That casting would not happen today. I just don't believe it would. And no matter how chastely handled it was, and we were very chastely handled in the way that we did this, but it just wouldn't have been a thing that you would do today. And kids would, Melissa, she's written about this. She and I have talked about this. Melissa knew the Almanzo character was coming, but she was given no opportunity to come and sit in on meetings. There was no mix and match chemistry session that was done. That would have been, that would be an automatic today, that a young actress would have the opportunity at least to meet and consider how they felt about a particular person walking in the door.
True.
Michael didn't do chemistry reads. Not in that situation, he didn't. He trusted his instinct about how it was going to go. I often said this. I said it in the book that we're going to talk about. I think if Melissa had had a voice in my casting, I would not have been cast. I just don't think it would have happened. I think that I was older and so much bigger than she was physically, with such a different set of life experiences, that I just don't think that she wasn't comfortable. I just can't imagine she ever would have said yes to
Sure.
that. Now, maybe she would have, because Michael might have said, this is who, if he said to her, this is who I really want, then, she trusted him and she might have gone with that, but she was never given a voice in that decision.
Right.
Which today just would not happen.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And I know that the biggest thing about it was
Kathleen, did I blow the premise of your question?
No, you actually that was a perfect answer.
Yeah, I thought that was great.
I know that it's one of those things that even now people look back watching the show and be like, oh, he's so much older than her. And it's like, but also Almanzo was 10 years older than Laura.
Yes,
Like
of
that's
course.
it's part of it. And it was funny as
Yeah.
we were watching, like I said, we were watching Little House the other day even, and I had that moment of the, man, that is a really big age gap, isn't it? And then I looked at my husband and he's like, I'm 13 years older than you. Like, oh right, never mind, it's not weird. Like,
Well, I guess the question is, Kathleen, maybe not so weird, depending on how old you were when you got married.
right. I was
I mean
22.
that. Yeah, I mean, okay, 13 years older, maybe pushing it at 22, but you're an adult.
Right.
You are able to make your own decisions. You are, Melissa at 15 years old. I mean, that's a criminal act.
Yeah.
In our world
Yeah.
today. It's amazing that we handled that in a way that, look, there was no blowback. Look, I got a letter. There was a letter to the editor in some Midwestern newspaper that our publicist, the unit publicist, sent me, where the woman was saying, how can I teach my young daughters morality and values, and telling them that they need to wait when you turn on Little House on the Prairie and here's 15-year-old Melissa Gilbert getting married to a grown man.
Yeah.
Now, that was the only letter like that I ever saw, but it did speak to some concerns that people had. In the main, though, I just think it was handled so nicely, and Little House was so trusted and loved that people just accepted what was being brought. And look, Michael didn't he kept talking. One of his major thrusts from Pa was that this man is too old for you. So I mean, he put that situation in play. He's too. I like the man. The man is whatever.
Right.
He's a man. You're a little girl. And it's when I met Melissa, when we first started shooting together, I looked at her and I remember sitting there in the makeup trailer with a cup of coffee in my hand, and she comes in as, bright and sparkly and, very outgoing. Melissa's always very outgoing, always has been. And I'm looking at her saying, I'm not seeing any hint of a woman here. And I don't know what the timing is on this. This is, I'm just starting off. I have no idea how this is going to play. I'm just concerned about getting through this first episode. But I'm looking at her saying, wow, how can this be played in any sort of a way that's going to be okay for everybody when they're clearly in the little pigtails and the smock dress and the whole thing, and there's just no woman there at all. And so that was something we worked our way into that whole, that was handled the way it worked. The reason it worked, I think, not to dwell on this too much because could be a touchy subject, but that it was always her infatuation. That's the way it was played. It was, until Almanzo saw her with her hair up and a little more form-fitting dress in Sweet 16, and unaware that she was wearing some high heels or a shoe with a little heel on it, a boot with a little heel on it. She was just a little girl. Suddenly, there was somebody else there. And I think that was sort of that wonderful thing that, we all have experienced in our lives where we see somebody in a particular way and then something occurs and they're completely different.
Yeah.
And this was this was how that moment happened. And then once it did happen, once Almanzo was focused on her in a different way, then it was handled very gently as we moved towards those moments, with the sort of the big turning point moment was the Sweet 16 kiss. That was where I was determined to play it younger than she was. So that there was just this total sense of naivete and wonder in this moment. There was nothing, there was nothing about it that you never had to worry that Laura was overmatched or in over her head or any of that. We played this very down the middle, you know, and I think that's what allowed it to work for people. I'm sensing like all this. I'm sensing some quiet anxiety.
No.
Like, I'm actually just listening, and I'm enjoying what you're saying, because at the same time, one of the things now for me as somebody who we talked about pre-show that I really didn't get into this show.
Sure. There were no bang bang. There was no pew bang bang explosions.
Yeah, there was no laser swords. You know, whatever. But going back and looking at it years later, one of the things that I do appreciate about this show, and actually finding out that Laura Ingalls Wilder was a real person, that was a real thing to me. I did not realize that as a kid. I did not realize it as a kid. Wow. So, but coming back and realizing that this was a loose play on her life, you know, also made me look at it as, okay, so this is almost like a historical documentary, you know, of what would kind of happen. So in that setting, that would have been an age appropriate setting actually for that time.
Totally.
That would have been far more acceptable in, because according to now the real Wikipedia, because I didn't get this from IMDb, but from the actual Wikipedia, which we all know is, well, it's Wikipedia. It said that she got married in 1867. She had just turned 18. So the whole time frame of meeting Almanzo when she met him in the show and the age and all that would have been.
Well, actually, I'm sorry. She was born in 1867.
Yeah, that's what I meant. So but she was
So she got married in the 1880s.
Right, but she was So
in the late
we're getting there.
Yeah.
But still,
the sleep deprivation thing's getting to your brain, isn't it?
You have no idea.
Do you see purple elephants yet, Tim? Are you hallucinating?
No, just never mind. Anyway, but yeah. So according to everything that I saw, she, you know, okay, so born in 1867, not married in 1867, but she had just turned 18 when it happened. So even at that time, the average marriage age in the United States was considerably lower because there was also a lower expectation of life quality. So,
no, exactly.
You know, so
exactly.
I think that it's only appropriate that was also shown in the show, but clearly handled in the most appropriate and proper way. And I think so. I think really when you look at it, it wasn't that it was unseemly or that it was done distastefully. It was done historically accurate, but clearly Michael made sure that things were handled on the up and up. So kudos.
Yeah, no question. I mean, yes, Tim, I think you're exactly right. I mean, no question. It was handled well. I've often thought that if Melissa and I were a little closer in age, if I had been a little younger or she'd been a little older or both, we could have brought a different kind of dynamic to the playing of this relationship. But you know, in retrospect, also looking back on it, one of the things that people love about it is the simple innocence of it.
Yeah.
It's this magical thing for people who really love that relationship, and it sits very well. You know, you never were really thinking about anything else because you just didn't get anywhere really close to all the sort of the realities of that kind of a relationship.
Exactly. It was all very surface.
Like you said at the beginning, it was very much just Laura's infatuation.
Yes,
and that was exactly how it was shown. There was no retaliated feelings from Almanzo other than it's Beth. It's a little kid. Like he was.
Yeah, she's my nice young friend, Beth. Yes, absolutely. That's what it was, and that's what it needed to be. That's absolutely what it needed to be. Yeah.
All right, Dean. So a couple of minutes ago, you brought this up, so let's jump into it. You mentioned that there's a book upcoming, and now the title of that book, I believe, is called Prairie Man: My Little House Life and Beyond. Now that will be freshly available by the time this episode here has decided to hit the airwaves. Now, if I'm hoping for a moment that you can kind of walk us through your book, what readers can expect to find, and maybe even for somebody who was not a Little House fan, why they should pay attention to your book and give it a read.
Well, you know, I really wrote the book in all candor, Tim and Kathleen. I wrote the book with Little House fans in mind. I mean, that's, you know, I have to be completely clear about that.
Sure.
That said, there are certainly other aspects of my life covered in the book. I think, there are a lot of things that relate to Little House that people who love the program will get and appreciate. One of the things that I talk about a lot is the common thread of my life to Almanza Wilder's life. How I was raised in a rural environment. Spent my summers in a rural environment on a family ranch that was founded in Northern California in 1885. Uh, Living with no running hot water, no electricity, coal oil lamps at night, washing dishes in the kitchen together as a family, getting up and doing chores, riding horses, swimming in a swimming pool that was carved out of the ground with horses and plows and covered with chicken wire and plaster, so it was more like a pond than a pool that we think of today. So there was all of that. So that the world of Little House was completely comfortable to me. I knew it organically what this was. So when I arrived on the set and saw my first coal oil lamp, my first comment was, "There's not enough oil in that lamp." And it wasn't like I'd seen these lamps. I'd cut the wicks on these lamps. I knew what this was. I was saying, "You've got it turned up too high. You're burning the chimney. You shouldn't have it high enough up to burn the chimney." But it threw more light that way. These things were and being around horses, being around wagons, no, I had not spent a lot of time around, women in long dresses wearing corsets and, all of that. But okay, we've all seen that. But the world of Little House was very comfortable to me. I also write about the fact that, and something that, we talked about in the beginning of this, the microphone and all of that. I mean, I talk about sort of my early years of feeling bullied and shy and introverted, and that sort of coming into myself. That's a big part of that, about a big part of my story. The discovery of, the discovery of one's interest in the talent. I write about the power of first love in my life. I write pretty extensively about that in the book. And this woman, who is still my dear friend, who, she really shaped me or gave me confidence, offered me that. Because of her belief in me, I was able to see myself in a different way than I was seeing myself. And I think I carried a lot of that into the meetings that I had for the projects where that was appropriate. Little House was certainly among those projects where that was appropriate. I write about my first, the big part was in a Judy Blume book, a novel that was turned into a movie for television, Forever. Kathleen, you may be familiar with Forever, the Judy Blume book. So I played the Michael Wagner character in that, and shot up in San Francisco. Wonderful director named John Cordy, who had won a lot of professional accolades for his work in a movie called Farewell to Manzanar, and the autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman, and an Academy Award-winning documentary called Who Are the DeBolts and How Did They Get 19 Kids? Wonderful director. And we shot in and around the Bay Area, and I was the only local hire. Everyone else came from Los Angeles to be in that. So that was a wonderful, so I write about that and coming to Hollywood, the culture shock of coming to Hollywood when you've grown up in a pretty sheltered environment in Northern California. That was a big head turner for me. And I realized I was operating, more than a few steps slower than most of the young people I was meeting in Hollywood at that time. But, you know, I have to say that reality is exactly what put me in a position to be cast as Almanzo Wilder. You know, if I had been this hip guy, I never would have gotten a look with Little House. I mean,
Right.
It's just because, you know, the attitude. I grew up in a matriarchally driven family. I grew up, you know, in a multi-generational family with a huge amount of respect for the women in my life. That was a very big, those women, my mother, my grandmothers, my aunts, cousins, these women played a huge role in my life because, and particularly in the case of my mother, and I can't de-emphasize this, her willingness to be real with me, to share with me information that as a young boy I needed as I was growing into a young man.
Mm-hmm.
Her openness to share that information gave me a huge respect for the world I was in. And it, you know, when I just remember like going into, you know, those moments in school when you're in school where, you know, people are embarrassed and giggling when they're hurt, you know, learning about the facts of life you know, in a classroom, and people are giggling and uncomfortable. I'd heard it all already. I'd gotten the whole story. There was nothing, you know, I was not laughing or giggling. It was like, yeah, this is it. This is real. I think information, my mother and father's willingness to have me have information about my life, was about the world around us, was a really big part, played a very big part in shaping who I became and who I am. Maybe, you know, naive in other ways, but I think empathetic in a human sense,
Yeah.
connected in a human sense. I think that was really important to them. And I think Michael saw that, and Susan Sukman, our casting director, saw that. You know, you don't have a chance to tell people your life story in 5 minutes when
Right.
you come in the room, but you carry things in the room with you when you come in. You know, casting decisions are made in about 8 seconds when you walk in the door somewhere. And someone knows if you could be right, and they absolutely know if there's no shot that you're going to, and they know it really quickly. And then you have to sort of, you know, if you're not right, you want to get out of the room as fast as possible. And if you are right, you want to get out of the room as fast as possible because you don't want to give yourself the opportunity to convince them that you're not right.
Yeah, don't change their mind.
But yeah, don't change their mind. But that first impression is really powerful. And I think you don't know how powerful that is when you're starting off. You know, you come to understand that first impression is all important in the way people are cast. And you want to be able to take advantage of that, whatever that first impression is. And it's like, you can't change it. You can try and dress it up and maybe walk differently and sit a little differently, but you know, you're not really going to fool anybody. People are pretty perceptive. They know who they're meeting, or they think they know who they're meeting. And really, it's not even a matter of whether they're right or wrong or not. It's what they think about who you are. And casting directors are trying to make that assessment
Sure.
the minute they meet you as to how an audience is going to react to you. So anyway, that's all very important stuff. I write about, I obviously had a wonderful time with Little House. I did 2 other series. I worked on Broadway, but I also write about in the mid 1990s, or 20 years after, you know, I sort of thought that this is what I wanted to do with my life. I was really struggling after in the mid 1990s. It was not an easy time in the mid 1990s because I think for whatever reason I started to question my value as what I was. And of course, as soon as an actor starts to sort of tweak around with who they are, good things generally don't happen. You know, at that point, you sort of want to stay true to who you are because that's what you do the best. But I really was struggling during that time, and a lot of, not a lot. Look, I didn't go through a catastrophe. My life didn't completely implode. But for me, relatively, it was a very, very hard time. So I write about that and how, I had to go through, I went through a wonderful relationship and then a very unfortunate first marriage that didn't go well. And I was able to extricate myself from that quickly enough to be able to recover from that. And I then met Catherine, who I had met 15 years earlier on the set of Father Murphy after she had auditioned for Michael to play the love interest of Merlin Olsen on Father Murphy. And we ran into each other at a commercial audition, and she was sitting behind me in the meeting and said hello. And I turned around and sort of the light came on in my life again. And I saw her. So there was the girl again. The girl made a difference. I went home and called her, as soon as I got home, I'd asked her if I could call her. I called her. She had a message on her machine. This is pre-cell phone. She had a message on her answering machine at home before she got home from the same audition. She called me back and we met for coffee a couple of days later. We've been together ever since.
That's awesome.
And that's, so in Catherine, I write about this. In Catherine, I met somebody with whom I could really have a life. And it needed to be based in some kind of reality. I went through a long time where I was fearful of acknowledging that I was struggling as an actor. Mm-hmm. It just wasn't going well. And that was hard for me to wrap my head around that. It wasn't until I was with Catherine, that I realized that, wait a minute, I can be something else. I can do something else. That's going to be okay. It doesn't take away anything. Well, I thought it would take away, but really in reality, it doesn't take away, because the work that we do years earlier is the work that we do years earlier. And that stays, particularly in something like Little House, that has it has a wonderful staying power, as we've discussed. So when I started to open myself up to a producing career, it was funny, because I'd been on Little House and because people respected it so much as a piece of production, as an exercise in great production, people were more receptive to me as a producer, of me pitching myself as a producer, than perhaps they might have been if I'd had some different kind of background. So, I've said for years that every great thing that has happened to me in my life since Little House has had a Little House connection. Little House got me the role I played playing Tony in West Side Story in Japan for 10 weeks. Jack Wagner was supposed to do this tour. He had to drop out. Little House was hugely popular in Japan. I was pitched to the director on that basis. I'd never auditioned for a big time musical before. We met at my agent's house with a piano player. The director came. We sat in his little piano study area and sang with him and talked about it. And they hired me. And I got that opportunity to do that. And, after coming home from that and getting through that reasonably well, it was a little bit of a bump in the beginning, but I got through that pretty well and got the opportunity to sing for Stephen Sondheim about a month and a half after I came back from Japan. I was singing really well at that point. And he hired me in 2 hours to come to New York and join the Broadway cast of Into the Woods.
Wow.
Yeah, that was an amazing thing. But these Little House connections, mm-hmm. These things have led to other things.
Yeah.
I've had a very blessed life. My work as a producer, you mentioned in the beginning. I've done documentaries and DVD bonus content, right, and features for little biographical features. I produced for Motorsport, did motorsports, and I've done Olympics production. my friend Keith Allo, who I'd worked with at championship auto racing teams, as well as at the U.S. Olympic Committee, called me on a, God, it was just about this time in 2011. He called me and said, "How would you like to produce a talk show that we're doing?" We'd worked together for years, and he introduces me to David Faraday, who is one of the most interesting characters if you play golf. And Tim, you're smiling, so you have some sense of David Faraday.
Yes, I do.
David is one of the most fascinating, interesting, opinionated, idiosyncratic people in the game. I said to Keith, I don't play golf. I've never produced a talk show. This is NBC Golf. This is NBC Sports now we're talking about. I don't play golf, and I've never produced a talk show. And he said, "That's okay. I know you can tell a story." And, the Faraday show was about telling stories of people who play golf and who have had interesting lives. And we spent 10 years doing that show together. We did like 180, 150 hours of that show over the 10 years. I produced, over 80 hours, was the producer of record on like 80 hours of that, and was involved in all the live shows and all those things. It was just an incredible experience. David's just a seminal talent. It's just incredible. You're smiling. I mean, anybody who knows Faraday, you just have to get a kick out.
He cracks me up. So my first introduction to Faraday was playing a Tiger Woods game, and he did all the voiceovers for that.
Sure,
and
didn't he and Vern Lundquist do those voices, something like that?
Yeah. It was almost like listening.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it was almost like listening to a comedy duo where there was the straight man and the cut up. Yeah.
Oh no! I'm sorry. It was Gary. Gary, his friend Gary, who he did.
Oh, I can't remember his name.
He worked on CBS for years. I'm embarrassed that I'm not. It'll pop into my head. But the two, they did photo shoots where they were Laurel and Hardy. They did, really funny, very funny duo.
Yeah, Gary McCord.
Gary McCord. Thank you so much. I mean, he and Faraday were amazing together.
Yeah. And so if you would miss a putt in the Tiger Woods game, just the lines that they would throw out at you. You're playing this game, and you're working your mouse and your angle. You're trying to read the putt, and if you were taking too long to read the green, they would, you'd hear the announcers in the background, fire off some line about, glad he's got all the time in the world or something like that, and it was very very entertaining.
Yeah, I know he is extremely entertaining, and David is a guy. It was very interesting to work with him. I mean, David is a guy who has used his pain and his missteps in his life to help other people. That's a big part of David's story. I mean, David has been addicted to every substance known to man at some point or another. I mean, that may be a little extended, but David certainly enjoyed his adult beverages, and he takes a. I don't know. I've seen him take like what felt like a handful of pills every morning to do whatever it was that he needed to do that day. And these are all things that are sort of, a little up here, and a little down there, and sideways this way, and all these things. I mean, there was a lot that David was going through all the time, but he brought this wonderful humor and insight to conversations with people. Did you ever see the show?
At the time back when I was not the biggest golf fan. I liked playing golf video games, but I didn't like watching golf on TV.
Right.
Now,
got it.
So this, I think,
David talks about how golf is a great excuse to take a nap on a Sunday
exactly
afternoon.
it was.
I mean, that's one of his favorite lines.
I think the title of this episode will be "The Things That Tim Didn't Appreciate in His Younger Years."
Well, that would be easy, and that would be easy given who you're talking to. Where everything in my life is, well, not everything, but looking back at half a century of something.
Right. Yeah.
So well, good for you, Tim. There's time though. There's time. All these things are streaming. You can go to Peacock and watch 50 episods of Faraday.
There you go.
Yeah.
The few things I have seen of Faraday amused me, and most of my experience with him was with the Tiger Woods video games through EA Sports.
Great with that.
Yeah,
great with that. He and Gary McCord were wonderful.
Wonderful.
I have a feeling Vern Lundquist did some of that too, but
I think he was in there as a third announcer, where they would like go back to like studio stuff, and then Gary and Dave were out in the field, and I think that's the way it worked.
Yes, they were on course.
Yeah.
Yes, David was always a walker.
Yeah.
As was Gary McCord. Yeah.
So, Dean, I know that it all goes back to Little House, and that just seems to be the way that your life has worked too. I mean, you talked about all of the things that you got because of Little House, but you were actually involved in another incredibly popular franchise, very popular for more of my age group. And I mean, it was 5 seasons of Little House versus 5 episodes of Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Yeah, right. I did get a trading card though.
You did?
I got a trading card, which just blew me away, given that I'd only done 5 episodes. I couldn't believe they wanted me to have a trading card.
But I mean, you're Buffy's dad, so it made sense.
Yeah, it was Buffy's dad, right. Buffy's dysfunctional, mostly absent, obtuse dad. I think that's part of the reason why I got the job, is because I think that Joss Whedon, who's a brilliant guy, thought, what a neat joke to cast a guy who has this image of being the perfect husband and father, and hire him to be a guy who's not really a very good dad.
Yeah. Hank Summers definitely could learn a few things from Almanzo Wilder. That is for sure.
And I would have gladly learned them if he'd wanted me to learn them, but I think he liked it. He liked it obtuse better. It was much better for the show. Buffy was such. I mean, this. You're a fan of it. I mean, Buffy was such a smart show with a wicked sense of humor, and such a. He created through that series such a wonderful reality for these characters to function in, where there was all this jeopardy around them all the time, but they could also have this wonderful humor about it too, where they could be, sort of this gallows humor that ran through the series. I thought Sarah Michelle Gellar was just off the charts.
She was
great
absolutely fantastic as Buffy.
Yeah,
and you're totally right that it had a lot of humor in it, and it's funny as it's one of those things that even now I'll find myself quoting once in a while. It was actually when our daughter was little and just still baby talk babbling, holding a book, baby talk babbling, and I looked at her and I'm like, don't speak Latin in front of the books. And my husband from the other side of the room starts cackling. He's like, did you really just quote Giles? Yes.
Oh, that's funny.
Yes, I did.
That's right. He was wonderful.
He was.
Yeah, just this sort of befuddled. He was what the not the handler, but he was the coach.
Right.
He was
yeah.
He was like her coach, but it was called something else.
I don't remember what the terminology was.
But yes, just really great group of people in that. I knew I was stepping into something really good when I got there, and I think the first appearance was like their 4th or 5th episode. And the crew, when I came into this, just said, this show, and when crews know, and I mean, if crews are excited about something, they will tell you that they're excited about it. This crew was over the moon about this show and how good it was. And so you think, wow, got to take that seriously.
Yeah.
These people they have bought in completely and they love what they're doing. This is a really good sign.
Mhm.
So when it premiered, there was no doubt it was very, very cool, very smart, and so wickedly bizarre, funny, quirky.
Mhm.
But grounded in a much more reality than the movie Buffy the Vampire Slayer was, which was really really cotton candy in a sense but he had something else in mind.
Yeah.
Joss Whedon had something else in mind for the series. He wanted it to be grounded in something that was a little more real, and I think he achieved that.
Mhm.
He achieved it really well.
Yeah, we've had the chance to talk to Armin Shimmerman, who was Principal Snyder, on multiple occasions, and talking about his experience on the show as well. He says the same things, that it was just there was just something about that set.
Don't forgive my dog. Our little Cavachon barks at everything that goes by the house. So there we go.
I'm just surprised you haven't heard my pit bull yet, so it's okay.
No. Yeah, I haven't heard a thing.
Right. Yeah.
But you are going to hear our dog because he's going wild. It's dog walking time in the neighborhood.
Yeah,
fair enough.
That'll do it. So I wanted to know though, with being both Almanzo and Hank Summers, what has your experience been like being recognized as those two such important characters, but two vastly different characters?
I think in all reality, the Buffy experience is a nice thing to have done, but it doesn't. There's no sort of cultural weight on my work in Buffy as compared to how involved I am in Little House. It's a very different thing, and I've really vested myself in Little House for many, many years since it was over, and doing DVD bonus content and doing documentaries about Laura Ingalls Wilder, and recently being involved in the production of our 50th anniversary celebration here in Simi Valley. I'm all in on Little House. I'm a total believer in what it means and what it stands for, and because it's been so good to me. Not only is it good,
Sure.
but it's been really good to me.
Sure.
Yeah.
So that's just, and obviously I did in a syndicated comedy. I went from Manly to Moondoggie and played Jeff Moondoggie Griffin with opposite Karen Richmond as the seventh Gidget, and we had a ton of fun on that. I mean, it was a silly, fun half hour. It started off as sort of a traditional rom-com in the pilot, and then it quickly turned into very much sort of a live action cartoon when it went into syndication. First run syndication, premiering on a Tuesday nights at 7 or 7:30 and rerunning at 10 a.m. on Saturday mornings. I mean, it was a very youth vibing show.
Sure.
And so we did a lot of silly stuff on that. Unfortunately, because of music rights, they used a lot of Beach Boys. So there was a huge amount of Beach Boys publishing in that. And when it came time to renew those contracts, those were going to be a little too rich,
a little too pricey
to renew. And so the show has literally been on a shelf for, really coming up on 40 years.
Yeah.
It's been sitting on a shelf. So, such a contrast to Little House, which has never been off the air since it premiered on September 11th of 1974. It has been a constant, and it still runs in over 140 countries around the world every day.
That's crazy.
So it's incredible.
So you mentioned something, and I want to show this because I thought it was cool. So found that.
Oh, there it is. Oh, there it is. Wow. Where did you find that?
That is on eBay. If you can't find something, go to eBay. It'll be there.
Go to eBay.
It'll be there.
Yeah. And I signed 2,500 of those cards.
Oh.
They sent me a box of these cards, and I took, I don't know, 3 or 4 days for an hour or so a day, and just went through these cards and sent them back to them, and they ended up in some bubblegum pack.
Right.
It pretty cool. I mean, there are no Little House trading cards.
No.
People make trading cards, but there's no official Little House trading card. This was an official Buffy the Vampire Slayer card.
There you go. So yeah,
Yeah.
if you're interested, you too could have this on eBay for only $29.99 plus shipping. So there it is.
Wow, go and get it. That's the only one. I don't have one. I signed them all and sent them back. I should go on eBay and buy it.
There you go. There's actually a bunch of them.
Send me that link.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so I won't buy a bunch. Maybe I'll buy one.
There you go.
Yeah.
So my final question.
Okay, was this the silly question?
No, Tim's got one more question. Tim's got a silly question after this. I mean, it's a slightly silly question. I was telling my friend that I got to talk to you tonight, and my friend Danette and then her sister Dawn actually had a 2-part question. Danette wanted to know if you kept anything from the Little House set. And Dawn's wasn't as much of a question as much, or more of a, she wanted you to know that your sister Eliza was incredibly annoying.
So let me answer the first question first. So what I have, what I have from the Little House is mostly costume oriented. So I have the last hat that I wore, which was Michael Landon's hat initially, or his doubles hat, which I wore in the last 2 seasons. I'm not sure why that decision was made for Michael to leave his hat behind and for Almanzo to wear his hat, but that was the decision that was made, and I've got that hat, and it's one of my most prized possessions. I have a shirt, which there's no way I can wear anymore, and a pair of suspenders and a pair of work gloves. And that's basically it. And as cast goes, I think, Melissa had a lot of things that she got to keep. They made sure that she auctioned all of them off. She wanted to sort of excise that part of her life out of her. She has her memories of all that stuff. But those are the things that I have, and they were on display when we did our event in Simi Valley, along with recreated versions of costumes and a lot of other original pieces that people had and shared with the audience. As far as then the other point about incredibly annoying Eliza Jane, I absolutely adore Lucy Lee Flippen, who played Eliza Jane. I bonded with her. We met each other on the first day of shooting in 1979, first day of shooting for season 6. And I just had an instant affinity for Lucy. And she knew exactly what she was supposed to bring to that. I love the way they introduced her, where, the kids come in and they see, what looks like a pretty nice silhouette from behind. And she turns around with these little spectacles and sort of this scowling, stern face. And the kids are just like, oh, what do we have here? This is not going to be good. But Lucy understood what she was bringing to that. She's a wonderful, wonderful person and so talented. And she was a pleasure to work with, because she was just so absolutely true to what she was doing. Her intentions on everything that she was doing were really terrific. I've said to her a long time ago that if I don't have an older sister, but if I could have an older sister, I would pick Lucy to be my older sister. I just think she's spectacular, loving and decent, and so thoughtful about people. And when Lucy was an ice skater when she was a young girl. That was her dream, was to be like an Olympic skater. She ended up skating in like the ice capades, and she was like, a rockette on the ice. Wow. Lucy was really a lovely, long, lithe woman, beautiful on the ice. And she still has that athleticism, and Lucy's in her late 70s now and still has that wonderful athleticism about her. I think she's wonderful. But I can understand if I can get if the voice and the way she could be at times, I can understand. But I saw all the love underneath that.
Yeah. And
Fair.
I can definitely, you can definitely tell that it's the character, not the person.
Oh, totally. Yeah, no, totally. Yeah.
There are some moments. I have some moments with Eliza Jane. It's the shaking your head, looking at her with the oh honey, oh boy,
oh honey, oh boy. Okay, well, and she was doing her job.
She did it very, very well.
Yeah, she was doing her job. Yeah.
All right, Dean, we've gotten ourselves to the point where we need to ask you the silly question.
The silly question?
This is the silly question.
I'm afraid of the silly. The silly questions are always scare me because it's like you feel like you've got to have a really silly, wonderful answer. But okay, go ahead.
Now you can answer this as silly or as serious as you would like.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So this question comes from it comes from Kathleen because somebody asked her daughter this question, and Kathleen was hurt that they didn't ask her too, because at a certain point, people stopped asking adults this question. And that question is, Dean Butler, what's your favorite dinosaur?
Why am I not Ross Geller right now?
Oh, that's nice reference.
Yeah. My favorite dinosaur? Look, I don't think I'd ever want to come face to face with a dinosaur, but boy, the way Jurassic Park did these raptors, like, wow, that is one dangerous creature there. Certainly that's a favorite, memorable, definitely. God, isn't it amazing? Of course, the ones that the dinosaur that flew.
Pterodactyl?
I always remember, now, are you old enough? Tim, are you old enough to remember Johnny Quest on television? Yeah. So, of course, Johnny Quest had the one episode where they go to this island in the middle of nowhere and there are dinosaurs and there's I can't remember what it's even called.
The pterodactyl?
But there you go. Yeah. And and the great sound that it made and all that. So I guess, okay. So that's my favorite one is the flying dinosaur.
Fair enough. Good pick.
That's a solid answer.
Okay, good.
Jolly good show.
I think, though, that why am I not Ross Geller right now might be my favorite response to that question ever.
Ever. Well played, sir. Well played.
Oh, you've asked this question before?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
in Faraday, we used to ask people questions, silly questions, and we would, like, one of my favorites was toilet paper over or under?
Oh, over.
Yeah. Toilet paper rolls over or under? Are you pulling from the bottom or pulling down from the top? What's your answer?
Top. If you go from the bottom, you're an anarchist.
Yeah, top. It's got to be over.
Yeah, top. Yeah, it's definitely top. And I don't understand. If I ever am in a bathroom where the toilet paper's under, I have to change it.
Me
and I don't care. Yeah.
Well, you sit there and you look at it and you go, why? Why would you do this?
Why?
Why do you hate people?
Why?
Have you had that moment, though, when you're at a friend's house and you realize that their toilet paper is under and you start reconsider your friendship with I thought I knew you.
Oh, no, I'm not going to go that far. I'm just going to fix it for them.
Oh, no, I fix it for them. Then I go out and tell them that they're anarchists.
And then confront them.
That our friendship is under reconsideration.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's a really good friend if you can do that to them. Then, hopefully everyone laughs and you're all good.
My daughter has started flipping the toilet paper around so that it goes under just to mess with me.
Just to annoy
me. I'm like,
and this is why I love her daughter. So.
Because she's
There
fantastic.
you go. Wow. Yeah.
Oh, Dean, we have enjoyed this conversation so much with you tonight. Where can our viewers and our listeners go to find out more about your work?
So, I am official Dean Butler on Facebook, on Instagram, and TikTok. Now, I don't know how long I'll be official Dean Butler on TikTok because I just don't know what's going to happen with TikTok. Right. I don't think anyone does. But for sure, on Facebook and Instagram, I'm official Dean Butler.
Awesome.
All right.
Well, we will definitely link your socials, and we will link the TikTok as long as the...
Oh, yeah. No, please. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And we'll post something from this when it comes out. We'll do a clip and post it, and we'll push back at you. We'll,
there you go.
Connect to you.
Awesome. We look forward to that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so, guys, just want to remind you that subscribing is the single most important thing you can do to help this show continue to grow. Get amazing guests like Dean Butler to come on and share these stories and have some laughs with and have references about Ross Geller and dinosaurs. You're not getting that anywhere else. So don't forget to hit that little button down there to click like and subscribe. And check out Dean's book when it comes out. There will be a link down in the show notes down below so you guys can check out his book, Prairie Man. So please.
So let me just say this one last time. I'm going to jump in on you here for just a second. So yes, Prairie Man is available for pre-order on Amazon and at Barnes and Noble. But I hope what people will do is walk into their local bookstores and ask for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
When they're ready to get it, so that the bookstores will, because I think that's what the book industry needs is people going into bookstores and buying books. So I hope that people will consider that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Go ahead. I'm sorry I interrupted you. Continue on. You're on the wrap now.
No, I was at the very end of my spiel anyway. So yeah, please go check out your local bookstore. If they don't have it, ask for them to get it. And support your local bookstore because Barnes and Noble, they'll make their money somewhere, but your local guys, they need your help. And that's your community. So go help them, give them some help. And check out the rest of Dean's work as well. Follow him on all his socials and have some fun there. And again, Dean, thank you for your time. Kathleen, this is it. Say goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye. Bye.
Copyright 2024 FSF Podcast. Reference to any specific product or entity mentioned on this podcast does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by FSF Podcast. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. If you have any questions about this disclaimer, please contact us via email at info@fsfpodcast.com.